I don't know if you've ever seen that picture. It's like an iceberg, and you see the very tip of the iceberg that comes out of the water. And that's basically like what you see on the outside of somebody. And then you have the iceberg that's like, it's there's a lot of the iceberg that's actually submerged underwater. And that's the part of somebody that you don't see. And I feel like that's the perfect analogy for meeting girls in the strip clubs. Like there is about this much that we see on the outside and what they're willing to share with us. And what we don't see is the huge iceberg underneath of the water.
Mujevale, Mujevale, Mujevale. My name is Bani Kibuka and welcome to another episode of the Ugandan Ball Talk Show. I'm so excited to have you on here.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So you're going to have to teach me, how do you pronounce your name? I've been arguing with Emily today to pronounce your name.
It's Brittany.
Brittany. Okay.
Yep.
So I have my African accent and my British English, so we've been all over the place.
No worries.
So how are you doing? How is life?
Life is good.
Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of people have just been through the pandemic. Like my podcast said, through the pandemic, I was stuck at home. I didn't have anything to do. So how was that for you? Like how did the pandemic find you, and what happened through that?
The pandemic was a long time at home.
Yeah.
I actually started my business during like February of 2020 is when we launched.
Yeah.
So we had no idea that we were about to go into what we were about to go into. We also, my husband and I recently adopted our daughter out of foster care. And she will be 10 next week. But we had never spent, she's been with us almost 3 years, but we had never spent quite that much time together. And so learning to adjust as a family and bond, and it was the perfect time for that. I was thankful in that aspect that we did get time to learn each other a little bit better in that season. But I am glad that we're slowly returning to a sense of normal. So
yeah, that's like, I'm happy too that everything is getting back to normal. But like, I mean, there's a lot of people who got good things out of the pandemic, and like, I mean, it was bad, but we get time to stay at home, spend time with each other, spend time with families, just like you did. And a lot of people started different things through the pandemic, like my podcast, your business, and that's pretty good that at least some people got something good out of it. I mean, there was a lot of negative things, like the lives of people that have been lost. But yeah, I'm glad to hear about that. Actually, I was just looking at a picture of your family, and then I saw the girl. Emily showed me the picture. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I was going to ask you about it, but I'm so glad that you've talked about it. So actually, to start, we've talked about Emily a lot, my wife, but so having a conversation with my wife one time, she was actually, I think she visited, she went on a retreat where you guys met, and she told me about the amazing job that you and your family are doing with the Freedom Pedal Company. So how did you talked a little bit about how you started? How did you start it, and what made you start the company?
Yeah. So back in 2013, I went to a conference on human trafficking, and I was a freshman in college. I had no idea that the world was that broken and dark. I came from a very naive, like conservative Christian household. And I don't know, we just didn't really talk about, issues like that. And so I just was completely unaware of the gravity of the issue of human trafficking. And so the conference really opened my eyes. I went with my sister-in-law, and we met a woman there who was doing strip club outreach. The conference was in Chicago, and she was doing strip club outreach in Grand Rapids, and said, hey, you guys are from Grand Rapids. Why don't you come and join us and do strip club outreach with us? Because we've seen a direct link between the sex industry and human trafficking. And so we got back to Grand Rapids, and we joined this lady on her little outreach adventure, and quickly realized that I wasn't actually old enough to get into strip clubs. I was only 19 and you had to be 21. And so I just kind of started praying, like, man, what is my role in all of this? How do I help these girls? And, at 19, what do I do? And so one of the major problems that the group was having was that they like couldn't get past the bouncer. Like the managers and the bouncers were like turning them away at the strip clubs. And so at the time I was like, well, I like to bake. So in my college dorm, I was baking cupcakes and cookies and all of these random baked goods. And it literally turned out that bouncers couldn't say no to cupcakes. And that was what got us into the door of strip clubs, as ridiculous as that sounds.
That is funny. So, I'm gonna distract you a little bit. My wife and I just started watching Ted Lasso. I don't know if you watched the TV show Ted Lasso. Everybody has been talking about it. There was a TV show, Ted Lasso, but there's a scene there where the new coach hired, he makes like cookies and brings them to the boss every morning. So that's a good way to get people's attention.
Who knew, right? Yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of how we started. And then eventually I was old enough to get in the clubs, and I would go on outreach with them and just provide holistic resources for the women who felt unsafe within the sex industry. And shortly after I was able to go into the clubs, that organization just completely fizzled. They kind of imploded and the team just kind of looked at each other like, okay, we can either completely walk away from this, or if we feel like there's still work to be done, we can pick up where this organization left off. And we just didn't feel like it was time to quit on the girls that we had worked with. And so we created our own organization. It was called Created Free. And basically we went into illicit massage parlors in Grand Rapids, operating as legal brothels, and then strip clubs. And then we ended up expanding to Traverse City, Michigan, and Cadillac, Michigan as well. So one of the reasons we started Freedom Paddle Company was because we got all of these girls to go on like outdoor adventures with us. So we basically were trying to build relationships outside of the clubs, because it was hard to build relationships under bright lights, loud music, and all the things happening in a strip club. And so we would invite them to beach days, and we'd do hikes with them and bring them out with their families to go kayaking and all this other stuff. And so eventually we were like, man, there is definitely a correlation between nature and getting outside and healing from trauma. And so we kind of connected those with Freedom Paddle Company, and we rent paddle boards and kayaks and snowshoes year round. And through that, we're able to take women on outdoor excursions as well. So
nice. Yeah, I'm gonna get into that actually, the paddleboard company. But one question I was gonna ask you while you're talking about sometimes people might do something like when you do like a strip club ministry or strip club, going into that, there's a lot of like temptations like can pull you towards that. Like, what have you done to distance yourself from what you're trying to get those people out of? So like when you go to a club, you might actually end up liking it, and you're like, oh, I'm going to stick to this. And then instead of pulling those people out, it pulls you in. How have you avoided that?
Well, we are a faith-based organization, and so a lot of it has come from prayer. We actually have a prayer that we pray in the car before we head into the clubs, just kind of asking God, like, don't let any of this stick to me, basically. I'm there for the girls and just there to serve. And I mean, the good part is like, we're not a fully nude state. And so that's a bonus in our favor. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. But it's a lot of prayer. And unfortunately, I mean, there's something to be said for men going into strip clubs. Like, there's clearly a need there. But it's not ever been or felt like my job to reach out to the men that visit these establishments. And so that's another one of our distancing practices is, if if a guy approaches you and gets uncomfortable, we have, some steps that we can take. If we need to leave, we will leave. But yeah, there are definitely some precautions that need to be taken for sure.
Nice. And how do these women respond to that? Like when you go talk to them, how do they respond to that?
Honestly, a lot of them are really receptive. We always come bringing some kind of gift. So whether that's a baked good or if it's like we've brought lip balms and nail polish, and our team in Cadillac actually brings full-on meals for the girls and they share them with them. But most of the time the girls will just come sit with us on their dance rotation. And a lot of them are open books. I mean, they'll just sit down and just spill life stories to us. We have had quite a few girls who come up to us and try to test us on faith stuff. A lot of them know the Bible or they grew up in Christian homes. And so, a lot of the question is, how does a good God let all of this stuff that's happened to me happen? And you have about 30 seconds to answer that before she goes up and dances. And so, it's a lot of testing. But overall, we've been really accepted. We don't pay a cover charge when we go in. The manager gives us free drinks when we're there. So we always get a Sprite and sit down at the table. And so
does the manager knows what you guys are doing?
Yeah. I mean, he has to.
but like now, if you think about it, like if the manager lets you go there, those people are going to change and then he's going to run out of business. So like, how is that possible? Like, because I would say the manager will stop you from going because he's
right. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. It's honestly like the grace of God. I have no idea.
That's definitely grace of God because about
it,
So like how has this changed lives of people? Like what can you share with us to testify how this has changed actually? Like one of the people you reach out to, how has it changed their lives?
Yeah, we've got several girls who have left the club in all 3 cities. And I think, I mean, there are so many stories I could tell, but I mean, this was kind of a crazy one. We had a girl come into the club and she was only there for a few weeks and her boyfriend was actually dropping her off and he would stay in the parking lot while she danced to make sure that she didn't leave early. And we happened to come in one night and it was the first time we had met her. And she came up to us sobbing and she was like, I cannot get away from him. I don't have my own car. I feel like I'm trapped here. I don't want to dance. But in a sense, he was pimping her out. And so, we had just gotten a call earlier that day from Single Moms Ministry in Traverse City, and somebody had just donated a random car. And they, for whatever reason, did not have a use for this car. And they called us and they said, hey, do you know anybody who needs a car? And we were like, you know what? I don't know. Let me ask around. And sure enough, this girl, she shows up and she goes, I think if I just had a car and I could get away from him, that would really solve my issue. And we all looked at each other and we were just laughing. We were like, wow, okay, great. And so, we helped her get this car. We helped her get the insurance on this car. She left her boyfriend. We helped her get into housing. And to this day, like my mom and her still get coffee together and, she's doing awesome. So I mean, every situation in the club is different. You have girls who are there because they like to dance. And then you have girls there who are being literally forced to dance, and there's everything in between. And so, I mean, we just held a weekend retreat for survivors of sexual assault this past weekend in Traverse. And we had 3 girls join us for that one. And all of them, I mean, had such unique stories. But I think the common denominator, obviously, is, it's just the trauma that sexual assault causes. And then, the healing journey is just so different for every girl.
That is really good to just hear the transformation of life. And those are some of the things I'm passionate about. I grew up in a Christian home My dad is a pastor, and my mom, both of them grew up in church. And my dad has a girls' ministry back in Uganda. These girls are not the same situation in which you go to, but these girls go through like the abandoned, orphans, abused, stay on the street, and some of them go through like different things. And for me to see those girls' lives change, how my dad has impacted their lives, and hearing the stories you share, how you are helping these girls to change their lives, that's something that touches my heart. And these are the stories like I want to listen. I want to listen to. I want people to listen to see what God is
Yeah,
doing, and even talking about like somebody providing a car. That's God's provision right there. God's grace touching people's hearts.
absolutely.
I've had things happen to me in America where God has provided from times when you didn't expect anything, and something like that like happened. So I love hearing those stories. So
Yeah.
what are some of the activities that you do with people, and how does these like help your company? You had started mentioning about the renting the pedal company.
Yep. So people rent paddle boards and they rent kayaks and they rent snowshoes in the winter with us. We do predominantly group paddle experiences. So basically, it's like groups of 8 to 10 people, and we provide like breakfast, lunch, or dinner. We do like an intro to paddleboarding class, or we've done sup with your pup classes too, teaching
Okay.
people how to stand up paddleboard with their dogs.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so it's just like fun outdoor experiences for the general public. And every paddle group actually provides a scholarship so that women can join us on holistic wellness retreats, like we just had this past weekend,
Oh, nice.
for free.
Nice.
And so we offer our wellness retreats to the women that we serve, but we also work with several safe houses in the area
Uh-huh.
for women who are, going through a holistic program through them, but maybe need a weekend retreat as just like an added program situation. So, yeah, our snowshoes operate the same way. And then we actually also go on adventure trips.
Yeah.
We summit mountains across the country, and we've started to do summit excursions with survivors as well, kind of as like the physical culmination of the emotional and spiritual mountains that they've been climbing through a safe house program over the last 6 to 12 months. Um, we're like the last step. So they are rescued out of a trafficking situation. They end up at a safe house. They go through this holistic healing program. And then we just get to celebrate the heck out of them for a
Yeah.
weekend and take them up a mountain and just tell them like what an incredible job they've done,
Mhm.
like it's a huge deal. You completed an entire program, and we're that bridge between safe house and real life. So they have a group of 8 women that come around them for an entire weekend and just love on them, encourage them, and then just say, hey, we're here as resources past this as well,
Yeah.
creating those lifelong friendships. So
That
yeah, all of
sounds really
our
that
trips also provide scholarships to those as well, so that we
yeah.
can continue our programming cost free to the girls that we work with.
That sounds really interesting and really fun because I know actually Emily was telling me one of the trips that you take people to, and like we were talking about doing one of those. But like, what are some of the places where you take these people? I know she mentioned about Alaska at one time. What are some of the different
Yeah.
places where you guys go?
Yeah. So we have a Banff National Park trip in July. That one is in Alberta, Canada, actually. And we're summiting Mount Rundle, one of the largest mountains in the city of Banff, which is going to be super fun. And then we've got an Acadia National Park in Maine trip in September of 2022 as well. And that one is like a glamping trip. Um, I think that one's going to be a lot of fun, but
Yeah.
we're summiting Cadillac Mountain there, and that is the highest mountain on the East Coast shoreline.
Wow.
And then we do have an Alaska trip in the works. We have not quite launched that one yet. But yeah, Alaska is also on our
Yeah.
trip list. So
So I've noticed that you guys do some activities and then you also offer like winter fall activities, right? Like
yep.
okay. Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And I have heard that you host like retreats where do these take place and how do they help your company? You mentioned about retreats while we were talking.
Yeah. So, yeah, the retreats are kind of like twofold. So we host the retreats for the general public, which is like the Banff trip, or the Acadia trip. That's just for anybody to join us on. Included in those, like final price of those, is the scholarship, so that we can also host retreats for survivors. So our retreats for survivors look a little bit different. The one that we just hosted this past weekend was actually in Traverse City, and we just rented a beautiful Airbnb, for all of us, and it was lovely. But we do like some kind of outdoor activity depending on the time of year. This time it was a hike. We did a 3-mile hike in Frankfurt with the ladies, and then we bring in a nutritionist at every one to talk about the importance of like what you're putting in your body. A lot of these girls, don't have any concept of like whole body wellness. And so over the course of the weekend, that's kind of our goal. We talk about identity. We beat that into the ground. You are worthy. You are loved. You are whole. Jesus loves you. All of those things. So that is kind of the main focus of the weekend, is identity, whose you are and why that matters. But then the nutrition component comes in, the outdoor component comes in, and then we do some kind of like art therapy, or something like that, to get their hands moving and just to do something a little bit different. And so,
not forgetting, Traverse City is one of the most beautiful places in Michigan. For those of
you
who
awesome.
who don't live in Michigan, you're missing out. Like, you should visit Traverse City. It's just
absolutely
amazing. Yeah, I've been there quite a few times. So even just being in the town itself, like, it's just beautiful.
It is.
So if you could recommend one of these retreats, which one would it be and why? For anybody, listeners, and anybody who is interested.
Well, that's so hard. I love Banff. This will be my 3rd time in Banff next summer, but I feel like I should recommend Maine because it's not as full. Banff is completely filled.
Yeah.
But Maine, we still have spots open for. So I had never been to Bar Harbor, Maine before September of this year, and I was blown away by the beauty.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And Cadillac Mountain is one of the most approachable summit hikes I've ever done. I felt so accomplished getting to the top. But yeah, it's just gorgeous. You've got cliffs, you've got water, you've got mountains. I mean, it's like the whole package. Yeah. It is gorgeous. So
yeah,
the food is so good.
I was in Colorado like 2 months ago, and I went up on the hike a little bit on the mountains and stuff. It was really beautiful. So anything like that, I think will be really interesting. So
yeah.
I also saw that you were the Shelbys Michigan tea. What was that? And explain the experience, what it was like.
Yeah, so Shelbys Michigan is a group of like faith-based entrepreneurs and leaders in the faith community. And basically every year they pick 100 women who are doing some kind of important work in Michigan, and they honor them at a tea. And our state representatives come and they award you with a little paper and, basically just thank you for your work in the ministry space. And so I was selected for 2020, which was crazy. Wow. And yeah, got to meet a couple of state representatives, and they asked me to speak and give a little bit about our business. And so it was really fun. It's a cool group of women to be a part of, for sure.
That's really nice when you get recognized sometimes of like some things, like you do something and it's like a reward. So it's always nice to even meet people and connections and just being. So I saw the pictures, and I wanted to ask you about that, like what the experience was like. Yeah. So how can somebody listening, somebody who has heard us talk about all these things, how can they support you, your ministry? I know you've said when people go on these retreats or they participate in that, those, either the finances or something helps to sponsor a girl. Like, what other ways that can people support?
Yeah. So paddleboard rentals are huge for us. The retreats are huge for us. Snowshoe rentals are huge for us. Tomorrow, actually, we launch a program of scholarship sponsorships, which is going to be super exciting. So we had a lot of people who were like, I can't necessarily afford to spend this amount of money on going on a trip with you guys, but I do want to provide a scholarship. And so we broke it down over the course of a year, and it's $75 a month. And basically in return for providing an entire scholarship, we give you it's 2 paddleboard rentals, 2 snowshoe rentals, a sweatshirt at the 6-month mark, quarterly handwritten thank you notes with new Freedom Paddle Co stickers in there every month. Nice. And then quarterly Spotify playlists that are like inspired by the outdoors. And then at the summit excursion, we'll actually send you a postcard from the summit with a little video from the top of the mountain thanking you for your support. And so that's something we're launching tomorrow that we're really excited about. But honestly, like even not financially, sharing our stuff and following us on Instagram and following us on Facebook and sharing our message with friends is so huge. We would just really be appreciative for people who want to hear about our mission, and then also to educate, the community about human trafficking, and that it is real here in Michigan, whether we want to believe it or not. And being educated about human trafficking and then sharing our stuff is huge too.
Yeah, on that very note, I wanted you to just share, I will put in the description, but just share your social media, like the username or like Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, so people who are listening can just add you, and then I'll add it in the description.
Perfect. Yeah, it's at Freedom Paddle Co. for both Facebook and Instagram. So
just like that. It's just easy.
Just like that.
So just go add them. And I also noticed that you guys have so much, and I'm actually going to order so much. And there's I love stickers. I share my story when I go to speaking engagements. When I was 8 years old, I'd never seen a sticker in my life. I didn't even know what stickers are for. And they sent me a shoebox gift. That's what I talk about when there was a lot of gifts when I was young. And I pull out a sticker and I realize it peels off. And I'm like, so what do I do with this sticker? I didn't know what to do. So I just decorated my whole face with stickers. So till today, I just love stickers. Whenever I go to a small town, whenever I visit somewhere, I just buy a sticker and just stick it. So I'm going to buy some of your merch because I saw you guys are selling some. And if anybody else is interested, we'll put a link on there too. So
thank you. Yeah, our stickers, I don't want to brag, but they are pretty cool.
I saw the pictures of them. So where is the Freedom Paddle Company based out of? Because you mentioned
Rapids.
Okay. I was going to say, because you mentioned Grand Rapids and then Traverse City. So I wanted to make sure I got that right. Yeah. And I saw a picture of your van. It's so super cool. So I want you to tell me a story about that.
Oh, it's a fun one. Actually, when we started, we're basically mobile. We meet you at the beach. So I was like, man, I'm going to need a van to carry all these paddle boards. And we looked at Ford Transits and just regular utility vans. And I could not shake the vintage Volkswagen van. I was like, that's the ultimate surfer vibe. And so I started scouring the internet for a 19 whatever Volkswagen, and came across this one on eBay actually. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about eBay.
Yeah.
I've never bought a vehicle on eBay. And so I just reached out to this guy, and he had a super great price on this van. It was the first one I had seen in our price range in a while. And I reached out to him immediately, and I was like, okay, here's what we're doing, and this is our mission. And I love your van, and I'm willing to buy it right now if you just want to take the bidding off. And he goes, I love what you're doing. His wife's actually from Michigan. Oh, wow. And they were like, yeah, we'll stop bidding and it's yours. And so I sent in the money, and it was in Massachusetts. Oh. And so we were going to have it shipped to Michigan. But when it came time to have it shipped, it was going to be I think originally we were looking at like $400 or $500 to ship it. And we were like, okay, that's fine. It came in under budget. We'll just pay for it to be shipped. And when we finally went to go do that, it was like close to $2,000.
Oh, wow.
And my husband and I were just like, I am not spending $2,000 to ship this van from Massachusetts to Michigan. And so we booked flights on points for free to Providence, Rhode Island, drove to this guy's house in an Uber, and we showed up on his front door and we were like, we're just going to drive it back. And he was like, okay. And so he had gotten us an oil change. He got us like a bunch of van stickers.
Yeah.
They were so cute. And then there was a bottle of champagne in the cup holder. And he was like, this van is like my baby, and I'm so glad you guys are taking care of it and all this other stuff. And so we drove all the way from Massachusetts home in that van. He was not convinced it was going to make it. He kept texting us along the way. Did you make it to Niagara Falls? Did you make it to Pennsylvania? And so, but yeah, we named her Winnie when we got home. Winnie. And yep, she made it all the way, and we were so proud.
That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool story to just share, because I saw it. I really like old vans and old-fashioned vans. When I was in Iowa, I saw a van just parking there. I asked the guy, "Can I take a picture of it?" Because I really liked it, those old-fashioned ones. And they're so fun. Yeah, that's a pretty cool story for you to go get it and drive it back, because it's a long distance from Massachusetts back to Michigan. So anyway, I've really enjoyed listening to these stories and you sharing a little bit about what you do and what you do to help all those people. And I'm sure that all the people that are going to listen to this will learn something and appreciate the work you do, because you stand in a position to help somebody else. And that's why I really am passionate about, for those people who say I'm here, I'm going to stand in this position to help somebody else. So I really appreciate that. And you being able to come here and talk about it. So I have a few questions left to ask you, if you don't mind. What has been your life lesson?
I think, honestly, I don't know if you've ever seen that picture. It's like an iceberg, and you see the very tip of the iceberg that comes out of the water. And that's basically like what you see on the outside of somebody. And then you have the iceberg that's like, there's a lot of the iceberg that's actually submerged underwater. And that's the part of somebody that you don't see. And I feel like that's the perfect analogy for meeting girls in the strip clubs. Like, there is about this much that we see on the outside and what they're willing to share with us. And what we don't see is the huge iceberg underneath of the water. And having grace for that and understanding that there is so much more to each person than meets the eye has been such a good reminder in this season. Just being able to give grace and extend love, even when, they're cussing you out and they're not sure how to handle big situations and big emotions, and just being there to love them in the process.
That is really, I didn't even want to add anything onto that, because I was just paying attention to just listen to that illustration and you explaining that. And I'm sure whoever has ears will listen and understand what you're talking about. That's a very cool illustration, and you two relate it to what you actually do. So I also have another question that I usually ask people I host on my podcast. And who would you love to see on my podcast next? And you're going to have to help me get that person on here.
That's a great question. I don't know. So many people come to mind. We have some really awesome business owners here in Grand Rapids that are doing incredible things. Like, one of my friends opened a fair trade boutique, also helping survivors of trafficking here in Grand Rapids, and she's pretty awesome. But yeah, happy to send over some names.
Yeah, all right. I'll let you leave you to think about it, and just let me know when you find one. We're moving back, because right now we're living Ascota, which is like Northwest Michigan, but nice. We're moving back, and I might be working at the Grand Rapids Airport, so probably next month. So we'll be back in Grand Rapids for the rest of the time. We're moving back. That's why my office is really empty. I don't You can't see the other angles, but I took out everything and there's a lot of echo. Uh, so but I took out everything out of my office. And but yeah, I'm excited to go to get back to Grand Rapids. I really love Grand Rapids and meet people. All my friends are back down there. So yeah,
It's a
my
great city.
final question, at last, what gets you excited about life?
Mm. Honestly, this is going to sound really cliche, but I'm going to have to go with Jesus. The hope of a new creation and a bridge between the brokenness and the beautiful. It gets me up in the morning.
Nice. Yeah, nothing can beat that. I mean, I've asked that question from like a lot of different people, and everybody has like a different answer. But in a sense, if you think about it, like there's no wrong answer. It's something that you
No.
can reflect. You can reflect too, and you're like, oh, I never thought about that. One person I asked them, and they said food. I'm like, really? You might think it's joking, but like food, because
I mean, food is a
everybody,
motivator.
yeah. But everybody gets, I mean, not everybody gets excited about food, but like everybody eat food. Like you
Yes.
so but this person was happy to just have food. So like everybody has a different answer, and it's always nice to
Yeah.
hear that. And I love hearing that, and it helps me think about somebody's answer. So, Brittany, I really want to thank you for coming on my podcast and be willing to just spend this 30 minutes, 35, to just sit down with me and being able to answer all my questions. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so great to chat with you.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey there, I am Bunny Kibuka, the host of the Ugandan Boy Talk Show. Thanks for watching my video, and don't forget to hit subscribe and share with a friend. Tune in every Saturday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time for a new episode of my podcast. And for more information about this podcast, follow me on Instagram page talk_show_256.